The space station known as Echo floated quietly at the edge of the galaxy. Far from Earth, it was supposed to be a place of safety, a place where humans could rest and repair their ships. But now, every officer on the station stood still as a massive shadow moved closer through the stars. It was the UES Nightborne, Earth's most secret and powerful warship. No one had seen it before, not really. Rumors said it could disappear, attack from nowhere, and leave nothing but ash behind. Some believed it didn't even exist, but here it was. Drifting into the docks like a silent giant, Commander Eli Morgan stood at the viewing window. Watching as the ship finished docking, he wasn't easily surprised, but this ship made him pause. He had fought in battles before, seen cities fall and ships burn. But the Nightborne felt different. It didn't just carry weapons, carried silence, fear, and something unknown. As the docking clamps locked into place, the main door opened slowly. Out stepped Captain Laura Briggs. Tall, calm, and sharp-eyed. She was known for ending the Andari siege with only 2 cruisers and a supply ship. She had a reputation, but even she looked smaller standing in front of the Nightborne. With her was Lieutenant Jason Hale, the ship's tactical officer, and Dr. Nina Clark, the ship's science lead. They didn't smile or wave. They came to work. The war was moving too fast, and the Jarvak coalition was burning through planets. Like dry paper, the station's commander greeted them and handed over a small chip. It held the latest update. 12 human systems lost, millions dead or missing. The Jarvak didn't just destroy. They took people and technology. Then came. The warning signal just came through. "Captain," the officer said. "Distress call from Arden Sector. No time to waste." Captain Briggs nodded and turned without speaking. Her crew followed her back onto the Nightborne. The ship's engines powered up quietly to quietly, no fire, no noise. Just a humming sound like something ancient waking up. And then, with a single flash, the ship jumped into deep space inside the Nightborne. Commander Morgan stood on the bridge. The walls were dark metal, and strange symbols glowed along the panels. It didn't feel like a human ship, first time. Hale asked with a grin. Morgan gave a small nod. "Don't worry," Hale added. "It creeps us out too, but she listens." She. Morgan asked, "The ship?" Hale replied. "You'll see." As they neared Arden Sector, everyone grew. Silent, outside the windows, stars moved fast, stretching like white threads. Suddenly, alarms beeped and the stars snapped back into normal space. They had arrived, but there was nothing left. Arden Station was gone. Floating pieces of metal, destroyed escape pods. Broken satellites, everything was burned. Even the moons near the station were cracked open, as if something had dug into them and pulled them apart. What happened here? Someone whispered. Morgan scanned the data. No heat traces. This happened days ago, but then the radar pinged. Small dots, moving survivors. They were in escape pods, some barely working. Floating in silence, launch drones, Captain Briggs ordered. Small flying machines left the Nightborne and grabbed the escape pods, bringing them back. Inside, the survivors were weak, scared, and shaking. One woman held a child that didn't move. A man kept repeating the same word. Harvest. Harvest. Morgan looked at Briggs. "Something's wrong." She nodded. "We're not dealing with just war. We're dealing with something darker." Back in the medical bay, Dr. Clark scanned one of the survivors. Her face went pale. "Captain, they're not alone." "What do you mean?" "They have alien tech inside them," she whispered. "Small devices. Planted inside their necks for tracking?" "No," Clark said. "For controlling. And maybe more, Captain." Briggs didn't wait. She turned to Morgan. "We leave this system now, before they follow us back. But what about the survivors?" She paused, thinking, scan every single one. If even one of them is fully infected, we can't take them with us. Morgan's chest tightened. This was war. And war didn't wait for emotions. The engines powered up again, outside the broken station. The stars waited, cold and quiet, and far beyond them. The Jarvak were already moving again. But they didn't know yet. They didn't know that the Nightborne had entered the war. And from now on, nothing would burn quietly again. The Nightborne moved through space like a ghost. Its engines made no sound. Its lights barely showed. In the darkness between stars, it was almost invisible inside. The crew was quiet. The last mission still weighed heavily on them. They had seen survivors with alien tech planted in their bodies, and they had to leave most of them behind. Some of those people might have been saved, but the risk was too high. This wasn't just war, it was a different kind of war. Captain Laura Briggs sat in her command chair, staring at the screen. They were headed to War Telros 9, a rocky moon system where a supply base had once stood. That base had gone silent 3 days ago. No one had answered Earth's messages since then. Something was happening in the shadows of deep space, and the Nightborne was the only ship that could find out what it was. Commander Eli Morgan stood beside her, holding a tablet. "Stealth systems holding," he said quietly. "No detection signals so far." "Good," Briggs replied. "We stay invisible until we know what's out there in the war room." Lieutenant Jason Hale studied a set of glowing red dots on the table. Each dot was a Jarvak cruiser. There were 20, all docked together like a floating city. They had created a hidden station below the ice crust of Telros 9. The enemy was using the moon to hide, repair, and build. "This isn't a fleet," Hale said. "This is a factory," Dr. Nina Clark added. "And based on the energy readings, they're building something massive." The crew knew what this meant. If the Jarvak finished whatever they were building, more human colonies would fall. Millions more would die. Captain Briggs didn't blink. "Prepare the solar lance," she said. Morgan looked at her, surprised. "That's still experimental." She nodded. "We'll test it now." The solar lance was a weapon never used before. It focused the energy of a nearby star into a beam so powerful it could puncture a planet. It took 30 seconds to charge, 30 seconds in which the ship would be completely visible. No stealth, no defense, just glowing like a beacon. The countdown started. 30. The crew stared at the glowing energy ball forming under the ship. 20. Alarms on the Jarvak base began to light up. They had seen Nightborne too late. 10. The enemy launched drones, but they were still loading fuel. 5. "Now," Briggs said. A thin line of white light shot out from under Nightborne and hit the moon for 1 second. Nothing happened. Then the ground cracked open. The ice exploded. The entire base folded inward and vanished. Every ship docked to it was pulled into the collapse. The sky turned red, then black again. The Jarvak didn't fire a single shot. Morgan stood stunned. "One shot." Briggs nodded. "Send the message." A short video clip of the explosion was sent to every human fleet, and one encrypted copy was leaked to Jarvak communication lines. They needed to know the Nightborne was here. As the Nightborne drifted back into stealth, no one said a word. They had just destroyed one of the largest enemy stations without a fight. But they also knew the Jarvak wouldn't stay silent for long. "They'll hit back hard," Hale said. "We'll be ready," Briggs replied, but in the engineering bay. Something else was happening. One of the engineers, Nick Dawson, checked the outer hull readings. He frowned. There was a small mark burned onto the Nightborne's surface, not from the weapon, not from space debris. It was a symbol, Jarvak writing. But how? He called Dr. Clark, who scanned it and turned pale. "This isn't just a message," she said. "It's a mark." Morgan came down to see it. "What kind of mark?" Clark looked him in the eyes. "It means hunted," she whispered. "They know we're here now. And they're coming." Back on the bridge, Captain Briggs stared out into the stars. She knew they had started something big. The galaxy wouldn't be quiet anymore, and the Nightborne wouldn't hide. For much longer now, the real war was beginning. And the Nightborne, once a secret ship, was now the most wanted ship in the galaxy. The UES Nightborne was now known across space. One silent attack, and the enemy lost an entire base. But silence never lasts in war, and the Jarvak were already preparing their revenge. Captain Laura Briggs stood in the command center, reviewing. The latest reports: survivor colonies were sending messages of hope, saying things like the Nightborne saved us, and the ghost ship is real, but not all messages brought good news. One encrypted transmission had arrived from deep within Jarvak territory. It didn't come from a satellite or a drone, came from a human, could be a trap, Commander Eli Morgan warned. Watching the screen? Or it could be real. Briggs replied, if someone is still alive behind enemy lines, we can't ignore it. The message was short and simple. 3 words. They're building Leviathans. The crew looked at each other, confused. What does that mean? Asked Lieutenant Jason Hale. Dr. Nina Clark stepped forward, her eyes wide. I've heard that name in old intercepted Jarvak files, she said. They're not ships, they're something worse. The Jarvak were building Leviathans, massive creatures mixed with machine and organic matter. Living warships able to think, move, and attack without a crew, if even one was completed. It could destroy entire fleets alone. Captain Briggs stood up, her voice steady. Plot a course to the last known Jarvak deep space lab. We find out the truth, then we burn it. Nightborne shifted back into stealth mode, its hull darkening. Like it was blending into the night sky, inside, the crew prepared quietly. Weapons were checked, systems scanned, and the medbay restocked. They all knew this mission would be different, this time. They weren't just defending, they were going behind enemy lines. No backup, no friendly systems nearby. If they were caught, no one would come for them after a long jump through uncharted space. The Nightborne exited into a dark region called the Scar. It was a dead zone, no stars, no light. Only the wrecks of forgotten ships. No one knew how it was formed. But it was rumored the Jarvak used it as a testing ground. Visuals coming online, said Hale, zooming in on a distant object through the static on the screen. They saw it, a large station floating in the dark, shaped like a spiral. Its surface glowed with a dull red light. Dozens of alien ships were docked around it, but something else caught everyone's attention. Floating behind the station was a shape the size of a small moon. It moved slowly, breathing, and then it opened an eye. The crew gasped. It wasn't a ship, was alive. The Leviathan, not fully grown yet, but already terrifying. Its body was wrapped in armor, and long tendrils floated around it like arms. Even from this distance, it felt wrong. Like something ancient had been awakened. We can't let it live, Briggs said. We end it here. Captain, that thing's massive, Morgan warned, and we have one shot. She replied, we use the solar lance again, but this time it wouldn't be so easy. The Leviathan was protected by a defense ring of Jarvak destroyers floating in a tight circle. Each had heavy cannons and long-range tracking systems. Nightborne could only take a few hits before shields would fail. Suggestions? Briggs asked. Hale smirked. Let me fly us close. You mean pilot manually? Morgan asked, shocked. Yep, Hale said. In between those ships, low and fast. Briggs gave a slow nod. Do it. The crew braced themselves. Nightborne powered down its main lights and shifted into silent troon mode. Hale took the controls and began steering the ship like a knife through narrow cracks. One wrong move, and they'd be detected. One false signal, and it would all be over. Sweat dripped from Hale's forehead as he pushed the ship past the first destroyer. Then the second. The third almost caught them. Its scanners lit up. But Nightborne's hull bent light just enough to slip past. By the time they reached the perfect range, the crew was barely breathing. "Target locked," Morgan said. "Charge the lance." Briggs ordered. 10 seconds to full power, but the Leviathan turned its head slowly. Sensing something, its eye opened wider, and suddenly, a long scream echoed through the cums. No one had turned them on. The creature was screaming into their minds. Clark collapsed to the floor, covering her ears. "I can hear a tit speaking knows us." Briggs didn't flinch. "Fire," she whispered. The solar lance shot out in a burst of white light. It struck the Leviathan in its open eye. The creature screamed louder, flailing, then its body cracked, exploded, and turned to ash in seconds. All the destroyers woke up and began turning their guns. But Nightborne was already gone. They jumped just in time, disappearing into black space. On the bridge, the crew sat in silence, shaking, but the Leviathan was gone, and for the first time, the Jarvak had lost something important. Now they would come, and the real storm would follow. The crew of the Nightborne didn't cheer. They didn't smile. They had just killed something alive, something powerful, even now. The sound of the Leviathan's scream echoed in their minds. Dr. Clark stayed in the medbay, eyes closed, trying to recover. She said it had touched her thoughts, tried to understand her fears, what it found. It didn't like Captain Briggs. Stood alone in her quarters, staring at a picture of Earth. She whispered to herself, "If that thing reached our home, we wouldn't have survived." Commander Eli Morgan reviewed the ship's damage reports. Nothing serious on paper, but every crew member felt like something inside them had cracked. The Leviathan's death wasn't the end, it was the beginning. In the next 2 days, 9 distress calls came from nearby systems. Each one started the same. "They're coming." Then silence. The Jarvak were moving fast now. But they weren't sending cruisers or fighters. They were sending something new in one message. A scout described glowing black shapes dropping from orbit and burrowing into cities. In another, a freighter captain said a wave of sound made his crew turn on each other. Captain Briggs read each one carefully. Then she gave a simple order. "We go to Valis 3. Valis 3 was a mining colony, mostly underground. The people there weren't soldiers, just workers with families. If the Jarvak were attacking, soft targets now. This was likely their next step. As the Nightborne jumped toward the system, the crew prepared, but no one spoke much. Not after what they saw with the Leviathan. Lieutenant Hale sat at his station. "Running ship simulations," he whispered. "This time, we're not dealing with ships." Beside him, Morgan nodded. This time, the enemies inside the mine when they arrived at Valis 3. The colony looked quiet, too quiet. No ships moved. No lights blinked, but sensors showed thousands of life signs below the surface. Briggs frowned. No response from the colony governor. "Nothing but static," Morgan replied. "Then we send a team," she said. "But we don't go blind." This time, Nightborne used something Nutha Echo suits. Advanced X-armor designed to protect soldiers from both physical and psychic. Attacks Morgan led the team, joined by 2 Marines, Ava Brooks and Leon Carter. They landed outside the colony's surface gate and entered through a service tunnel. At first, everything looked normal, but as they moved deeper, things started to feel wrong. Walls were scratched, lights flickered, and strange symbols were burned into doors. Then they found the first group of colonists standing completely still, eyes wide, bodies frozen, but still breathing, like statues. Ava reached out to one woman, but Morgan stopped her. "Wait," he said. He looked closer. The woman's mouth was moving slightly, repeating one phrase over and over. "They're already here." Suddenly, the floor vibrated. The walls let out a low hum, and shadows began to move behind glass panels. The team pulled back fast, retreating to the surface. back on the ship. Clark ran scans on a sample. Morgan had collected a piece of metal from the wall with alien patterns. She looked at Briggs, face pale. "This isn't just invasion," she said. "It's terraforming from the inside out. They're turning the colony into a hive." The colonists weren't dead. They were being turned into signal beacons, mind transmitters, and worse if the process finished. Valis 3 would become a Jarvak stronghold, a silent trap for any human ship that passed by. Captain Briggs acted fast. "We use the flame charges," she said. "Ma'am," Morgan replied, "that will burn the entire underground complex." "I know," she said, eyes hard, "but if we don't?" "The Jarvak will." The Nightborne launched the charges from orbit, each one falling with a bright trail of fire. They hit the surface like meteors, cracking open the ground. Then a second wave fell, chemical firebombs designed to burn everything but the stone. The colony's underground tunnels lit up like a furnace. From space, it looked like the planet itself was glowing. No one on the bridge said a word. They knew what had to be done, but it still hurt. Morgan stood watching, whispering a prayer for the colonists. Brooks beside him whispered, "We didn't fail them. We stopped something worse." Briggs turned to Hale. "Send the message to Earth Command." "What should I say?" She paused, then said, "Valis 3 is lost, but so is their weapon." Outside, the flames slowly died down, but deep in space, far beyond sensors, something else awakened. A voice crackled across an unknown channel in a language the humans didn't recognize, but one word translated clearly: Nightburn. The destruction of Valis 3 left scars that wouldn't heal quickly from space. It looked like a burnt-out world, quiet and dead. But the crew of the Nightborne knew they had stopped something worse from spreading. Still, the silence that followed was not peace. It was the calm before something terrifying. Commander Eli Morgan stood in the main corridor, watching soldiers clean soot from their gear. He heard no laughter, no conversation. They were all just going through the motions. Lieutenant Ava Brooks passed him and nodded, but said nothing. No one wanted to talk about what they had done, not yet. Captain Laura Briggs gathered her officers in the war room. A new signal had arrived. This one wasn't a distress call. It was a challenge, a Jarvak broadcast sent across multiple systems. Short and clear, it showed a hologram of a Jarvak warlord standing over a pile of burning human flags. Then he spoke in broken human language. "We come now to erase your sky." "That's not just talk," said Hale, narrowing his eyes. "They want to fight. And they want it big." Briggs stared at the screen, then brought up the map. The Jarvak forces were gathering near a system called Tarses. Reach. It was once home to a human fuel refinery, but now it was abandoned. Wide open space, asteroid fields, and clear sightlines, perfect for a trap. "We're going to stop them there," Briggs said. Morgan looked up. "With just us?" Briggs nodded. "No one else can get there in time. We'll be the shield." She didn't say what everyone was thinking: they might not come back. Preparation began in the hangars. Engineers worked on the hull plates, reinforcing weak points. Weapon crews loaded plasma torpedoes, pulse cannons, and short-range disruptors. Nightborne's core reactor hummed louder, as if it sensed what was coming. Morgan walked into the drone bay, where Dr. Nina Clark was upgrading defense systems. "You still hearing anything from that thing we killed?" he asked quietly. Clark didn't look up. No voices, no whispers. "But I have a feeling the Leviathan wasn't the last of its kind." Morgan sighed. "Let's just hope it doesn't have a cousin waiting in the end." Dark, at 0600 hours, Nightborne jumped into Tarsi's reach. There were no planets nearby, just floating rocks and cold stars. The ship powered down and entered stealth mode. Drifting slowly, silently, it waited, like a predator, under the water, and then The enemy came. First came the scouts, small, fast Jarvac ships scanning the area. Then came the destroyers, massive ships lined with biocannons and armor that looked like bones. Behind them floated something worse, the Firecaller. A Jarvac capital ship that glowed from inside like a furnace. It was surrounded by a field of red energy. Nothing human had ever survived a direct hit from its main cannon. "Hold position," Briggs ordered. "Let them come closer." The Nightborne stayed still. Tucked inside an asteroid belt, its systems running low and quiet. It was outnumbered 20-1, but the crew was calm, because this wasn't just a warship, was a message. Inside the gunnery control room, Lieutenant Hale whispered to the crew. "We hit first. We hit fast. We hit hard. We don't wait for fear to find us." As the Firecaller moved into range, the Nightborne came alive. Its stealth broke. Its engines flared, and its weapon bays opened all at once. From a distance, it looked like the night sky had burst open. A full barrage of plasma missiles launched at once. Each missile split into 5 subwarheads in mid-flight, swarming through enemy ranks. 2 destroyers were torn apart before they even had time to return fire. Then came the main gun's twin hyperpulse cannons that tore through armor like paper. The Jarvac panicked. They hadn't expected the Nightborne to strike first. They're tight. Formation fell apart as ships tried to dodge and regroup. "Bring us closer," Briggs said, her voice steady. Morgan replied, "Captain, that puts us in range of their main weapon." "I know," she answered, "but they don't know we've upgraded." As the Nightborne flew straight toward the Firecaller, the enemy ship charged its core. Bright red light gathered in its center, aiming to release a death wave, but before it could fire, Clark activated a new defense system, the phase mirror. It bent the incoming energy around the ship, redirecting the beam into space. The Jarvac cannon missed completely, and before they could recover, Nightborne fired back. One shot, deep and focused. It struck the Firecaller's core. The giant ship trembled, then cracked apart, spilling red fire into the void. The rest of the Jarvac ships tried to retreat, but Nightborne wasn't done. It chased them through the asteroid field, blasting engines, cutting off escape paths. By the end of the battle, only 2 enemy ships escaped, and even they were burning. The field fell silent again, just like before. The Nightborne drifted alone, surrounded by wreckage and fire. But this time, something was different. Captain Briggs stood in silence. Then she said quietly, "Send a message to who?" Morgan asked. "To everyone," she said. "Hello. Tell them Nightborne didn't come to survive this war. We came to finish it." The space after the battle was quiet. Too quiet, the wreckage of Jarvac warships floated in silence. Flames flickered from broken hulls and shattered engines. But there was no cheering inside the Nightborne. No one celebrated. They had won again, but victory now felt heavier than loss. Captain Laura Briggs sat in her ready room, staring at the battle report. 31 enemy ships destroyed. Only 2 escaped. Nightborne had suffered minor damage, nothing critical. But the strain on the crew was growing. The silence between them was louder than words, and something deep in the ship felt off. Dr. Nina Clark entered, her face pale. She carried a small device, a black cube taken from the wreckage of the Firecaller. This thing was still active after the ship died. She said quietly, it kept broadcasting a signal even after the core melted. Briggs leaned forward, frowning. "What kind of signal?" Clark hesitated, then answered, "Coordinates?" Commander Eli Morgan stood in the war room when Briggs called him. She showed him the data. The cube had been sending a steady message toward a region called the Holloweb. It was a dark zone, near a failed star, filled with old mines and forgotten satellites. "No one went there anymore. Maybe it's a fallback point," Morgan said. "Maybe," Briggs replied. Or maybe something worse. Lieutenant Jason Hale checked the fleet charts. "We have no patrols near the holoweb," he said. "No stations, no colonies, nothing," Clark added. That's probably why they chose it. Briggs didn't wait. She ordered Nightborne to jump immediately. They would go in alone. Once again, if the Jarvak were hiding something there, they would find it and destroy it. They had to. The journey took for long hours through deep space tunnels. When they exited, they found themselves in a dead region. The stars were faint, and giant webs of broken satellites floated like metal ghosts. The ship slowed as it moved through the wreckage. All sensors were active, but at first they found nothing. Then something pinged. A tiny energy reading deep inside the debris. It wasn't natural. The Nightborne approached slowly, weapons charged, and then they saw it. Not a ship, not a station, but a gate. It floated quietly between two asteroid rings, shaped like a twisted oval of bone and black metal. Lights flickered on its surface, like eyes opening one by one. No one spoke for a long moment. Morgan finally said, "That's not Jarvak design." Clark nodded. "It's older. Then Jarvak." Hale asked, "Much older?" Clark whispered. "They didn't build this. They found it." Briggs stood, her voice steady. "Scan it for weapons." Clark replied, "No weapons detected." "But it's active." "Active how?" "It's listening," Clark said, "and something is calling back." A low hum filled the Nightborne, vibrating through the walls. Lights flickered for a moment, and every screen on the bridge went black for 2 seconds. Then it came back, but the systems had changed. Hale looked around, confused. "Captain, I didn't do anything, but we're locking onto the gate." The ship was moving, slowly, carefully on its own. Briggs tapped the override. Nothing happened. She shouted to engineering, "Manual control, now." In the control bay, crew members pulled levers and pressed emergency commands. But the Nightborne kept moving, as if something had taken control not from outside, but from inside. Clark yelled from her lab, "The gate is sending signals directly into our systems. They're not breaking in," she added. "They're inviting us." Briggs ordered a full engine shutdown, and finally the ship slowed. The gate stopped glowing. Silence returned. Morgan stared at the screen, breathing hard. That thing. It tried to open us like a door. Then a new alert pinged: an incoming ship. Not Jarvak, not human. Unknown class, unknown origin. It was long, sharp, and pulsing with green light. It had no engines visible, no windows, no insignia, and it wasn't flying, it was drifting. Briggs narrowed her eyes. "Is it alive?" Clark scanned it, then whispered, "Yes." The unknown ship passed through the bone gate, moving slowly toward Nightborne. Suddenly, the lights on the gate flared again, and a massive surge of energy blasted through space. The gate closed, the unknown ship stopped, and then it spoke, not in words, not in sound, but in thought. Every crew member felt it. A cold whisper inside their minds. "You have touched what was buried. You have burned what was bound. You are not ready." Clark collapsed, bleeding. From her nose, Hale screamed, grabbing his head. Morgan fell to his knees, eyes wide in shock. Briggs gripped the command rail, breathing hard. "Break contact, now." She slammed the emergency systems offline. The ship's lights dimmed, and for a moment, everything went dark. When the systems came back up, the unknown ship was gone. So was the gate, and the Nightborne drifted alone in the holoweb. Broken, shaken, and marked, Morgan stood slowly, wiping blood from his lip. "We were never supposed to find that." Briggs nodded slowly. "No," she whispered. "But now that we have, the galaxy will never be the same." The Nightborne drifted in silence. Its engines were offline. Its weapons were cold, and its crew was barely conscious. The encounter at the holoweb had changed something inside the ship and inside them. "Captain?" Laura Briggs stood on the bridge, gripping the edge of her command chair. Her breath was slow, controlled, but her hands were shaking. "Status report," she said quietly. No one answered at first. Then Clark's voice came over the intercom. "Weak but steady. Most systems are coming back online, but the ship's AI has been scrambled." "Scrambled?" Morgan asked, like it's trying to speak in two different languages at once. She said, "And one of them isn't human." In the engineering bay, sparks flew from the control panels. Technicians struggled to keep the main reactor stable. The ship was running, but it was no longer fully under their control. Something had reached into its code, touched its heart, and now it was. Watching Lieutenant Jason Hale stood beside a broken display screen. It kept flashing a strange symbol, 3 circles inside a triangle. "That's the same mark that was on the alien ship," he said, "whatever it was. It left something behind. Captain Briggs knew they couldn't stay there." She gave the order to reroute power manually and prepare for a jump. It took nearly an hour, but the Nightborne finally ripped through space and returned to chart it. Territory. They emerged near Eden Station, one of Earth's outer defense hubs, immediately. They were hailed by Central Command. Briggs stood tall and answered the call. A high-ranking general appeared on the screen, his face stern. "We received your last transmission and satellite footage from Tarsai's Reach. You destroyed half the Jarvak fleet," he said. Briggs nodded, "and lost something of ourselves in return." But before she could explain more, Clark entered the bridge, holding a data pad. "Captain," she said urgently, "we've got a problem." Briggs stepped aside, and Clark showed her the new scans. "A Jarvak fleet is moving fast," she said. "They're heading straight for Earth." The room fell silent. "How big?" Morgan asked. Clark didn't speak. She just turned the pad around. The screen showed a massive red cloud. Dozens, maybe hundreds of Jarvak ships moving like one creature. At the center of the fleet was something different, a shape far larger than anything they had seen. Hale leaned closer. "That's not a ship," he whispered. Clark confirmed it. "It's another Leviathan," she said. "And it's finished." The room filled with tension. A complete Leviathan, heading toward Earth with an entire armada behind it. No Earth's fleet could stop that. Not without heavy losses, maybe total destruction. Briggs looked around at her crew, each one tired, wounded, but still standing. "We've stopped them before," she said, "but this time, we end it." She requested emergency authorization from Earth's command. They granted it without question. The Nightborne was no longer a secret, was now Earth's only hope. Clark ran simulations as the ship prepared for battle. They had one chance attack before the Leviathan reached orbit. They would need to hit it from the inside, bypass its armor, and destroy its brain. But to do that, someone had to fly a bomb straight into the creature. Morgan volunteered first, then Brooks, then Hale. But Briggs raised her hand. "No," she said calmly. "This is my ship, and this is my mission." The crew protested, but she didn't waver. She chose Hale as acting captain, gave Morgan control of the bridge, then walked to the launch bay, where Clark was preparing the device, a compact fusion core wrapped in phase shielding. It could bypass organic defenses and detonate once inside the Leviathan's nervous system. Briggs suited up, stepped into a small stealth pod, and prepared for launch. The ship opened its hangar doors, revealing the dark stretch of stars and the distant red glow of the Jarvak fleet. "Bring me in close," she said. "We'll do the rest." The Nightborne charged forward like a blade through night. Its weapons roared to life, tearing through the enemy line. Explosions lit up the void as Jarvak ships crumbled. But the Leviathan kept moving, its eye glowing with ancient rage. The pod detached and slipped through the cracks of battle. Undetected, unseen, Briggs piloted it toward the Leviathan's open maw. Inside, she saw things no one had seen before. Spinal walls, glowing nerves, twitching muscles. It was like flying into a nightmare. She reached the core, activated the bomb, and whispered, "For Earth." The pod exploded in silence. A blinding white flash swallowed the Leviathan from within. Then it collapsed, and with it, the Jarvak fleet scattered like insects without a queen. Back on the Nightborne, no one spoke. They all stared at the silent spot where the Leviathan had vanished. Morgan lowered his head. "Hail the captain," he whispered. "She didn't just save Earth," Clark said quietly. "She saved the future." The war was not over. But for the first time in years, there was silence. No alarms, no screams, no crackling distress signals echoing across space, just the soft hum of the UES Nightborne. Drifting among the stars, a ship that had become both a legend and a scar. Captain Laura Briggs was gone. Her name now whispered across fleets, written in battle songs. And remembered by every human colony that still stood. She had flown straight into death and torn the heart out of the enemy, and in doing so she gave the galaxy a chance to breathe. Commander Eli Morgan stood at the center of the bridge, now acting captain. He wore no medal, no symbol of command, only the weight of her memory. And the responsibility she passed on. He looked out the window as Earth's blue glow came into view. She had saved it, and now it was time to bring her home. Lieutenant Jason Hale sat beside him, still recovering from the last battle. One arm was in a sling, and his eyes were tired, but he smiled softly as the planet grew larger on their screens. "She made it look easy," he muttered. Morgan nodded. "She made everything look easy." Dr. Nina Clark stood in the lab, reviewing the last remnants of the alien signal. The voice that had whispered through the gate was still gone. But it had left something behind in the ship's code patterns, shapes, pieces of logic no human mind had ever written. She didn't understand it fully yet, but she had a feeling it wasn't just a threat, was a warning. The Leviathans were not the beginning. They were something unleashed. But for now, Earth was safe, and the people had one name to thank. Nightborne. As the ship entered Earth's orbit, transmissions flooded in. News networks, government leaders. Defense Command, Bree-1. Wanted answers. Everyone wanted to see the ship that had turned the tide. But Morgan gave only one reply. Docking in 1 hour, no interviews, no ceremonies. Just let us rest. The Nightborne docked at Atlas Station. A giant ring built above Earth's surface. Thousands of people gathered behind. Glass walls to see it arrive. The ship looked like a ghost. Its black hull scarred and scorched, but it floated with purpose. With silence, with memory, the crew exited slowly, step by step. Some limped, some leaned on others, but they held their heads high. Every technician, every officer, every medic they had fought as one, and they had returned. A small group of children stood near the docks, waving flags with the Nightborne symbol 3 silver stars on a black field. One little girl held a sign that read, "Thank you for saving my planet." Hale saw it and paused. He wiped his eyes and whispered, "Worth it?" Inside Atlas Command Hall, Morgan gave a quiet report to the Earth's High Council. He told them the truth about the Leviathan, the gate, the unknown force that tried to invade their ship. He also told them that Briggs had made the only decision possible, to give everything so others didn't have to. The council listened in silence, and when he finished, they didn't clap. They stood, heads bowed, and one by one whispered her name, not as a leader, but as a protector. Later that night, the crew of the Nightborne gathered in the observation deck. No cameras, no reporters, just themselves. Morgan raised a glass. To Briggs. They all followed. To Briggs. They watched as her name was etched into the orbital wall of honor, right beside the names of those who had fallen in the first contact wars. But her name glowed brighter, because it wasn't just a name, it was a symbol, and in the deepest corners of the galaxy where the Jarvok now fled, they didn't speak of Earth or humans, they spoke of Nightborne. They spoke of the ship that moved like a shadow, struck like lightning, and left nothing but fire. They spoke of the captain who faced them alone and ended their god creature with a single act. And they feared that somewhere, in the quiet dark, another Nightborne waited, watching, listening, preparing. Because once a legend is born, it doesn't die. It becomes part of the stars, a warning to enemies, and a promise to all of humanity that even in the blackest night, we burn back.